Okay. So I'm going to throw out my first question to the panel. Any one of you can take it. Can one of you tell us about your impressions of this book? What characters did you like and relate to? Did you find this scenario real and true to what some students might be going through today? Anybody want to jump in?
I'd love to.
Okay.
I felt this book was so relatable. I related to Liv. Both of my kids attended a girls' school that required skirts for the uniform. My oldest was lucky the school policy changed. They added pants, and that's great. And my youngest, who is transgender, is now at AITE, so he can wear anything he wants. But those days of skirt wearing were really tough. So I related to Liv's struggle.
I get it. Abigail, any?
Okay, it is on. I actually will say I went to a middle school that had a very strict dress code similar to what's in the book. And, you know, I saw a lot of my classmates struggle with the same kind of problems that, you know, Liv struggles with in the book. And so seeing that, you know, that come in text and that being able to be beyond, you know, that experience of not being able to wear what you want to wear, being more than just, you know, something that only I went through in middle school was great to see, you know, the book represent that.
Mary?
I liked Liv's friend, Jacob. I think that it's really important to be an ally and just to be a good friend. And I think that that's really important. So in this book, I really sort of enjoyed their relationship and their friendship and sort of understanding the importance of, you know, just having a friend or having an ally is super important. And so that's what really kind of spoke to me.
I agree. And I thought Jacob was a surprising ally. I loved it. And Liv was surprised that Jacob was an ally. But I also loved how Jacob was an artist. And Jacob was able to express some things for Liv that Liv couldn't put words to. I love that. So I don't know, I'm biased because I like to draw myself. So it's an interesting way, you know, there's different ways to communicate and words don't always fit. So I thought that was especially cool. Again, to everybody on the panel, why are books like the Pants Project important to have in our classrooms? Anybody want to jump in on that one? Why do you think books like the Pants Project are important? Go ahead. Oh, you turned it off.
There we go.
Okay.
So the Pants Project and a lot of books like it are really important because they give a perspective that a lot of students either don't have, don't know they want, don't know they need, and that they don't have, especially when it comes to at home. Like if your parents are uneducated about a lot of the issues that something like the Pants Project discusses, sometimes having a book or having a discussion like that in the classroom around a book is the only way to get that kind of information and have that kind of those relatable themes that a student in going through what, you know, Liv is going through might really need.
Nice.
I mean, obviously representation matters, right? I think, I mean, I grew up in a time, you know, as much as I like to purport that I'm only, you know, 35, it's not quite the case. And I remember just growing up, I didn't know any of topics or anything that's different. I grew up in Monterey, California, or Pacific Grove, California, where it was 99% white. And coming from, and I didn't immigrate to this country until I was 8. So that was really interesting to me because from, you know, being a majority to such a minority was huge, right? So I think it's important to be able to read about people like yourself with common interests, common culture, to see yourself, I think is important. So I definitely feel like it's important for students to see themselves, not only in books, but I think also as a teacher as well, right? I think you need to be able to see who do you aspire to, who can you look up to? So I think that's why I believe books like this is an important thing to have.
And I agree. I think human beings are inherently, you know, diverse and multifaceted. And unfortunately, some folks that are from minority groups are marginalized and they don't, you know, always get to see themselves represented. And I think that it leads to bullying and mental health issues in the worst case. And so I think it matters to be seen. It matters to be in the mainstream and see yourself represented to help eliminate stigma and bias as well.
Agreed. I can tell you, running Lighthouse for 10 years, we are celebrating our 10 years this year. Every kid that comes in, 99% of the kids come in feel that they're the only one experiencing what they're experiencing. And, you know, the group isn't a therapy group. It's a group so kids can physically come together. Kids who are part of the LGBTQ community can come together and see there are other kids like them, and there are other kids like them in other towns. And you know, I run it in large part because I wish I had something like it when I was a kid. I suffered as a teenager, and I didn't come out until my 20s. And there was, I don't remember reading anything in my school that had anything, and I'm your age. So, you know, there was a whole lot of nothing. So I'm personally glad to see books like this out in the world now and in our classrooms. Okay, moving on. And I'll get to everybody in a minute, and you can all chime in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the book and some of the issues of the day. What did you particularly like or dislike about this book? Was there anything you didn't care for or that you particularly cared for?
I mean, it was a heartwarming book, right? It was really charming. I loved the themes of friendship, of finding your voice, of standing up for what you believe in. I think that's really important. So those are the themes that I really kind of enjoyed reading this book.
Oh, wait, it's not on. There we go. I'll also say, I think another thing I liked about the book is that, you know, it discussed a very serious topic in a way that was, you know, very approachable for someone of a younger audience, especially someone who's going through it in a way that they could understand. But also it was just the right amount of lighthearted, right? It was fun to read. There was good jokes, especially Liv's younger brother. Love the character. You know, I always value having comedy and always value having, you know, something funny to break up a serious topic, to make it easier to digest, to give you a break. And so I think that when the book wrote that, they made it very approachable for everyone.
And I liked it too, because it was lighthearted and sweet, but it also had, you know, issues and perceptions that some people do have, and it dealt with it in a really positive way. I loved that Liv had the complete and unquestioned acceptance of their friend Jacob. I, you know, was sorry that they were dealing with the ignorance and bigotry from Jade, but I loved how his relationship with Jacob helped him feel stronger and helped him ultimately deal with Jade and turn Jade's perspective around at the end of the book. Was lovely.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so I don't know if everybody's familiar with a Lexile score, but every book that's published gets a Lexile score. So it's reading level for grade. And this book was rated like for a mature third grader up to like sixth grade. So it's a long 250-page book, but it's a pretty quick read. And, you know, a mature fourth, fifth grader could absolutely get through this book. So my question is this book appropriate for elementary students? And how about for middle school students? Anybody want to tackle that on the panel?
I think I agree it's a pretty big read for younger grades, but I felt like it dealt with the topic in a very youth-friendly way. I honestly would have loved it if my son had a chance to read something like this in third or fourth grade, because he would have known a couple of years earlier that there are people like him, and it would have probably filled in a lot of questions. You know, he learned in sixth grade by finding stuff on the internet, and I was really glad that he did that when he did. You know, I think the earlier the better in this regard. So I think it's totally appropriate for third grade and up myself.
Mary?
So so I'm going to speak as a mom of a third grader. So I'm going to say that I don't believe my daughter is ready to read something like this. She's a really young sort of third grader, if not like second grader, social emotionally. And I think that my daughter just wouldn't wouldn't be prepared to read something like this. Now, middle school, I have no problems, or even fifth grade, I think she would get it. But I think for third, when she was 8, I think she could read the book. So, right, like reading a book and understanding and digesting it are two different things. Does that make sense? So Lexile level, she would have been like, okay, reading this. But some of the themes, I just don't feel that my daughter would be ready for that.
Like an LGBT family or
So the-
a transgender boy?
I think the family part she would get. I mean, I think there was a whole show. I don't know if you guys ever saw this, but Arthur. I don't know if you realize Mr. Ratburn married Mr. Aardvark. And I remember in kindergarten, she was watching it and she kind of was like, had this sort of like, mommy, and it was like 6:45 in the morning. And I was like, oh my God, did you get hurt? What's going on? She was like, Mr. Ratburn is marrying, Mr. Aardvark. And I had to sit to decide at 6:45 in the morning, do I just answer it like a flip answer, or do I actually sit and talk to my child? So I
Mm.
actually talked to Marabella about like, there's different types of families, right? So there are people with 2 mommies, there are people with a mom and dad, like our family, there's people with 2 daddies, or there's people who are, from a grandpa or foster care or who are adopted. So there's different types of families. So in that sense, I think she would have been fine with Liv having 2 mommies. I think the transgender component is where I think she would have kind of a difficult time. So so at 7 is when you kind of really realize object permanence, right? Like, what is object permanence? So I think at 8, I just don't feel she just would have it would have just been a little too much. She would have been like, what do you mean I have this body part, but you can change the body part? How does that work? So that I think I'm a little conservative in that sense. I think she just needs another year or 2 to bake to get it.
Okay, Abigail?
Oh, there we go. So I think I do, in my case, I'm a high school, right? I don't know everything about reading scores. I don't know how to assign reading scores or anything, but if a professional, clarified that its Lexile level was appropriate for someone of that age group, then I'd trust in the word professional and say that that's, an appropriate text for 3rd graders. And of course, why we'd be implementing the book into the curriculum is because going into it, students might not know everything. Students might not, have been exposed to any of these topics. And so, of course, some students aren't going to understand, but that is what the purpose of the book is, to help those students understand, to foster classroom discussions so that students can come out of the book fully understanding.
I also don't think that being transgender means changing body parts necessarily. Everybody's got their own journey and socially transition or maybe proceed further. But I think helping somebody understand that how somebody feels inside is grabbable at that age myself.
No, I get it. And again, I think this is just something that and my question is, and this is me looking in the mirror, am I the one that's more like gun shy because I don't want to sit and have that conversation with my child, or what is it? And that's a true sort of feeling that I'm, that I'm going to be very honest and open about. It does not mean that I don't, how do I say this? It's just, I don't know. I don't know. That's something that I grapple with. I'm just being really sort of honest about that. It doesn't, so.
For me and my family, obviously, we're a gay couple. We're raising a daughter. We're a Caucasian couple raising a daughter of color. And, the LGBT issue was in our face, right? Immediately. And when my daughter went to school in the playground, when she was in preschool, kids would say to her, well, who is this white guy coming to pick you up all the time? Like, who is that? So very early on, she was like, these are my dads, I'm adopted, and we called it her playground speech. She had a playground speech. So it was something we had to deal with right away. And it wasn't, there was no like age appropriateness for it. And, I hear what you're saying and where you're coming from, but I just don't think that there's you can't be too young to express your truth, and like Polly said, what somebody is inside, we have to be able, they have to be able to express it no matter what age. And I think people have been dealing with these issues for centuries. And we're finally grappling with a smart way to deal with it. And it's accepting people for who they are. And I don't think there's any age limit on that. And, you know, when a kid comes into Lighthouse and they tell me who they are, I believe them. I believe them the first time. And I think it's so important. And there's a wonderful book called I Am Jazz, and it's about a transgender girl. And it's really lovely. If I highly suggest it. And the library is going to have a list. Will you have the list that people can take, or we'll give it out at the end? And it's a book, it's a list of some really wonderful LGBTQ books for children and young adults. So take that list when you leave in the end. Okay, so I'm going to open it up now to questions to students, if we could get a mic. And whoever wants to talk, raise your hand. But this is a question for a student. And Abigail, you can take a stab at it first if you'd like. Did you see yourself in this book? Could you relate to the characters?
Oh, it's already on this time. Great. That's to work. Absolutely. You know, I realized who I was a lot later than, you know, Liv did, unfortunately. But, you know, I didn't have a book like this going up through elementary school. You know, I went to a very binary elementary and middle school, so I didn't realize this until much later on. But what the book had was a character that was able, and it very clearly showed you much of kind of the internal thoughts of what that character is. It showed you the internal thoughts of Liv, what he was thinking, how he processed the situation. It didn't show kind of, you know, the labels that society really constructed for Liv, or for people like Liv, or for people like me. It showed you truly what Liv was, who Liv was, what was he thinking, and how did he process everything that he was feeling. And it didn't show you any, it didn't, you know, and it was a good thing. It didn't show you how society says or how anything says you should process, is just how he did. And in doing that, I was able to find how I was able to process myself, and I was coming to terms with who I was, because I wasn't thinking about what the mainstream was or what, you know, society thought. I was thinking about, what am I feeling and what am I experiencing here? So when the book writes about that from Liv's perspective, I can see where I am and who I am and how we think in the same ways.
And who in your life did you find as a supporter? So Liv, you know, obviously had her moms, and I mean, did you have a surprising ally?
I will say, and I know that she can't be here, but she's watching on Zoom right now. My biology teacher from my junior year of high school, right, is my, you know, my science, Mrs. Smith, but her and all of my other science teachers, really. You know, I was going through a hard time in my life, and so I had asked them for, you know, extensions on a few assignments that I just couldn't complete at the time because I was dealing with thoughts of dysphoria and other things like that. And so my surprise came from my teachers, who were incredibly understanding, incredibly supportive. And, you know, the teachers who were most supportive were able to really help me get through one of the hardest points, you know, of my life, and of coming to terms with who I was.
So you're a senior in high school. What age were you just like, it's not quite right here?
A senior in high school, my earliest memory was maybe, I want to say, 7th-ish grade, when I was thinking, you know, wait a minute, why is, you know, being called a boy not, so why am I not taking that as a compliment? Why are my friends, you know, saying that my voice is getting deeper? I should be taking that as a compliment. Why am I not? And that kind of provoked a long line of questionings and a lot of thinking about things that took me longer than I wish I'd come to terms with it, but that was really my first thought.
Okay. So I'll say the question one more time, and anybody who wants to chime in, if they give something, a response to it. Did you see yourself in this book, and could you relate to the characters? Does anybody in the audience want to chime in? Yes, no? Going once, going twice. Okay. We have one? Oh, go ahead. Wait for the mic.
I was just gonna say I only read the beginning of the book, but one of the things that I immediately picked up on is how these parts of these gender affirming things that some people might not always notice are highlighted in the book. One of my favorite parts that I read was when Liv was getting a haircut for his first day at school. And for me, that was a part that I really related to, because just hearing his excitement, reading his excitement about getting a haircut was something that I really, really related to, because for me, getting my haircut is something that also really affirms my identity. And it's definitely a smaller thing, but it was something that I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I totally see that, because that's something that also brings me so much joy.
Thank you, Kristen. This is Kristen, who comes to Lighthouse on a pretty regular basis and who keeps us all on our toes, right? Is up on all the laws, national and international, and what's going on. And I'm so looking forward to you going to college, and I will vote for you for president one day. So give him hell, give him hell. So a question for anyone. I'm going to open this up. Anybody on the panel want to ask and or chime in? And if you want to answer, raise your hand. Why does LGBTQ representation in literature matter? Why does it matter to you? Oh, go ahead.
I think it matters most to me I think it matters a lot to me because I growing up in I'm from Utah, so that just is already a really big red flag. So growing up in Utah, they were really conservative about LGBT topics in elementary school. I remember asking my 5th grade teacher if I could use it in its pronouns, because I was like,
What
maybe
grade?
being
What age?
5th grade. I was
Uh-huh.
pretty young. But and it was because I'm like, maybe being a girl is just not it, you know? And so he responded with that, I think it's best if you choose that later in life over now. And that was like, oh, okay, whatever. Because I was a kid, I didn't properly know. And then when COVID happened, well, not even when COVID happened, I've grown up with a lot of LGBTQ topics around my lifetime with my gay uncles. They are amazing. I love them. And my really supportive aunt. And they've always given those topics to me. But if I was able to get that through school, then I would have been so much easier coming out to my parents and coming out to everyone else. I think the first person I ever told, I only told because I knew they were also LGBTQ, and that's the only reason I told them.
And how old were you?
I was 11.
Okay.
I was 11 turning 12, and then I first came out as bi to them, and then the first person I ever came out to transgender as was my best friend that I've known for years, and he's my biggest supporter now, and I'm really grateful for him. But if literature like this existed when I was in 3rd grade, I would have been so happy with life and oh, people actually don't like being called a girl either. Wow, that's so shocking. So yeah, that's probably the best thing that could have ever happened in my life, is if I was able to read literature like that.
Nice. So this is Aries, everybody, who also comes to Lighthouse, who also keeps us on our toes as well, and is probably the Kristen in training, right? So Aries is very aware of everything. So thank you. I appreciate your voice.
I do want to say, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll try my best to just voice what I'm trying to say here. Not only seeing yourself represented in text, which we've already talked about, and I'm sure people understand how important that is to so many people, but just in general, learning about such things for so many kids is super duper important, not just for the kids that are going through it, which is incredibly important, because realizing who you are is super important, and seeing themselves represented in text can be super important to realizing yourself and becoming who you are. But for even kids who may not feel the way that these kids going through these things are, it's super important because they need to learn about it, because understanding it's like the key to caring and understanding, and it's knowledge. If you half of like conflict comes from not understanding something. So many kids that are horrible, like you say they're horrible, but
Are fearful.
are fearful. They're fearful of what they don't know and they don't understand. So things like this, where they get to learn and see and talk about it in the classroom, can be super important, because ignorance sounds mean, but that's what it is. If these kids are able to understand and see, like from Liv's perspective, what he's going through, they see the struggles. The entire book, throughout the book, it shows what Liv's struggling through. And if they're able to see that, able to see, wow, this is really difficult, and this is how they feel, this is what they're struggling with, it can be super, super important for just becoming a more understanding, caring person, and creating a more understanding, caring environment,
Mm.
I guess.
And the
in
author did
all
such a great
aspects.
job with that, because the Liv was so relatable, and the
Incredibly, yeah.
experience was so relatable, and the
Mhm.
friends, even the mean friends, were relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Anybody else want to chime in? Evan, say something? Vinny?
So I'm trans, and I came out 2 years ago. Um, I was always more traditionally like masculine, but the elementary school that I grew up in, um, the schools that I go to is very diverse, and it's always been very diverse. But being a part of the LGBTQ community has always been looked down. And I remember first coming out in 4th grade, and I remember people like genuinely being scared of me. And I just think that that shouldn't, obviously that's not okay for any group. And so this book, I think like most of us know why they're like banning this book basically in the schools. And it's funny how they are acting like that one sentence in the book is not something that a 13-year-old doesn't go through. Like most 13-year-olds go through puberty. I personally don't. I'm on puberty blockers. But it's sad how this one book who's about a trans person is being banned, while other books that have way worse topics, and it mentions things that aren't technically appropriate for children, are just normal, right? And there's so many kids in my school who have said things about me or Aries or just any other kids in my school who are remotely similar to me. And no one ever does anything about it, ever.
Teachers don't do anything about it.
No, you
Mhm.
would have to personally go to yourself to a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Teachers see this happening all the time. They
Mhm.
never do anything about it.
Hmm. Okay, so stop just 1 second. Why do you think so? Do they get fearful in the moment? Like the teacher doesn't know what to do? Like just if thinking back on when something was said to you and it was in a classroom in a public situation, and like describe the moment if you could. And
So,
why do you think a teacher froze?
okay, so I have an example from this week. This kid in my gym class, he was questioning my identity. And I'm very certain about my identity. I make it clear.
I know, I
who
just
I
want to
am.
say we're all scared of you because you're a beast.
And this kid, he just keeps asking me. This has happened. This kid has been tormenting me and my friends for years, and he's inferior. So he's like, and I was getting upset about it, and I'm sure other people were getting upset about it. So I went to the guidance counselor. I saw my teachers. We went to the teachers. This was not last week, but something that happened this week as well. But from the past, these kids just torment my friends, and I know the teachers see it because I've gone to the teachers about it, and they just tell them to stop and do nothing. These are cis straight men who just
So how did you find help in your school, or did anyone help you in your school?
I went to the guidance counselor about it.
yeah.
And I told her, like, this has happened before, and I know teachers see it, and I know teachers hear it, and they do nothing.
Mhm.
Yet they do nothing. There are signs all around my school that say we do not tolerate sexist, transphobic, homophobic, racist comments, yet it still happens. And books like these should be normalized
Mhm.
so that, it's a normal thing. It's not weird to be trans or a person of color or any identity, basically. And I guess that's kind of it. It just has to be normalized.
Okay. You know what? I want to add in your case, I know your family, and you have it much easier because you have support at home. And there's a lot of kids like you that don't have the support at home, and it's 10 times as hard. So be thankful that you're one of the lucky ones. I've met your mother, and she's awesome. And that awesome support that you have at home is, you're very lucky, and in the minority. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Megan? Can we get the mic to Megan over there? Thank you. Way over on the end.
Thank you. Whoa. I wanted to actually give a shout out to all the kids today, because this is amazing bravery on their part, because they're arguing for their right to exist in things that they learn about in school, because we always learn about everybody else, and we have to recognize that. And these are kids that are doing that. I'm in my 40s, and even though I knew about my gender identity when I was 3, even though I knew about my sexuality when I was 5, I continue to have people question my existence up until this day. And so that, first of all, takes a toll. I'm a health professional and I work with queer people. And there's a reason that we have some of the worst health outcomes in the United States. It's because we have to spend a Thursday night doing this. Okay. So I want to be real about that. When we're talking about people that think that gender stuff is a fad, it's because of erasure. It's because of conversations like this. So I think we just need to really talk about the fact that this also, I used to be an educator. I was an educator in Europe. I was an educator in the Stanford public school systems in middle school for 6 years. And as much as I loved Stanford where I grew up and my community, it was not good for my mental health to be an educator in Stanford. And so I left because I have other skills and I can do other things, because there's so much ignorance around, and not even gender stuff, around anything that is LGBTQ. There's a very small group of professionals that are educated on this, and everyone else has the privilege to opt out. And so if you are choosing to ban books like this, you are saying, well, I'm all good. I'm represented. My family's in all these books.
Yeah.
My family's in the canon of great literature, and that's actually how it should be. But just imagine if you were born in a different body or a different family or a different community and you couldn't opt out of it. I'm supposed to be somewhere with my wife tonight. She was pissed. And I said, no, I'm from Stanford. I used to teach here. I volunteer at Lighthouse. I know all these kids. So I just want to talk about the fact that one of my mantras in my work, and I think in general for life, is we're all flowers in the garden.
Amen.
That's great.
Faith, did you want to say something?
I feel that it's important to have it in like literature because like also now at like my school, I have gay dads obviously, and where I
Really?
live, oh no, sorry, never mind. But where I live, it's whitey white and so like prestigious, and everyone makes $1 million a year, and they're all awful, right? But they don't understand that when they say slurs in the hallways, it's like if they read about how people felt with having like gay parents or being gay themselves or just being different in books, and they see like and physically read the tolls it does to people's like mental health and stuff, even if they're not going through it, but to see what other people are going through, because it's unacceptable how people are saying like the N-word in the hallways. And like I said before, I go to a whitey white school, and you have the kid who wants to be from the hood say the N-word, but realistically lives in an $8 million home, right? And they're afraid of gay people, right? They're afraid of furries. They're afraid of anything that isn't what they are.
Mm.
And I think that's unacceptable.
Mm.
Like I may not like what everyone else is because like not everyone likes everything, right?
Mhm.
But it's unacceptable that people are saying slurs about other people, how they want to express themselves. They can think it, but the fact that people are saying that and screaming it in the hallways, like I feel like reading about it, the literature would help people like understand more of what it does to people.
So I'm jumping in for a second. So to Vinny's point, how about in your school? You know, Vinny was saying that teachers freeze, they don't know what to do, and they get kind of scared and they don't correct in the moment, and they just sort of let it slide and sweep it under the carpet and they move on. How about in your school? Do teachers pounce on stuff like this? Do they get fearful? Like what happens?
They don't really pounce on it, but like they don't do anything about it. But like I'm not really defending them, but I understand what like why they don't particularly say anything. Because what if you heard it wrong? What if you didn't hear what they said right, or you're taking it out of context, right? Because if you're not in the conversation, then you don't necessarily know what it's talking about. Like what if the kids were talking about a book? Like yes, teachers should get in the conversation if they hear something, but I mean, like like if I said something to one of my friends and you weren't, and I was on the phone and you didn't hear the rest of the conversation what they were saying, and you heard me say something and you pounced on me, what if you didn't hear the context? What if you're yelling at me for no reason?
Like that never happens.
Never. But like with our school, it has anti-bullying posters everywhere, but it's like people are getting bullied for walking into the GSA.
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
there are so many people at our school. It's like I was talking about this with you a couple of days ago because
Uh-huh.
you were going into my school's GSA.
Yeah.
And I was like, there are certain kids that get bullied because they go into the GSA. You're put in like a little stupid group that you could be an athlete, you could be a popular kid, but as soon as you step one foot into that GSA, you're put in the group of you're gay.
Yeah.
You're gay and
Yeah,
you're weird.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's how my
So-
school is, and that's why
So,
reading about it helps.
I'm going to agreed. And I'm going to jump in and plug for Lighthouse a little bit right here on that note. You know, at Lighthouse, we want kids who are part of their GSA, but we want kids who are not part of the GSA. And every time I speak to a GSA, I say to the kids, you have half the battle won. You are brave to walk into this room because you know people gossip. And at Lighthouse, what we offer is a level of anonymity. Kids don't need to know that you're going to the fish church on a Tuesday night. Nobody needs to know, and it's your business and nobody else's. Not everybody is ready to march in a gay pride parade waving a rainbow flag, and we respect that. So thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that, and it's true. Go ahead.
Really quick, I just wanted to
also do a quick plug since Joe's doing it. This is more just showing like, so we can get some perspective on what's going on in the schools right now and what our AIT GSA is trying to do. We realize that teachers may not know, educators might not know how to approach certain things, and students might not have the knowledge, you know, as Lucas was talking about, it stems from misinformation and not having that level of knowledge. So right now at our AIT GSA, we're currently doing some professional development. We've done it at REPWAM. I did it with Lucas the other day back. We did it at Dolan with Jeff Bianco from Northeast, or Strawberry Hill, not Northeast, Strawberry Hill. And so it's just going to show that although I don't know what it's like at the other school districts here at Stanford, we're trying to push for that professional development to have kids have that knowledge. We're also doing presentations at the middle schools, and then we're going to move down. Hopefully, I don't know about this year, it's a little hectic at the elementary schools as well. So it's just going to show at least our little group down here at AIT is trying to spread information and trying to get everyone as informed as possible. And if we keep pushing that, if we keep advocating and doing everything, we can get everyone can be informed, and literature like this can be normalized. As someone mentioned before, all of this information can be normalized soon enough.
Wonderful, impressive. Yes,
Wendy.
Wendy.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody, especially the young people, for raising up their voices and sharing with us tonight. It's so important and it's so impressive. To the point of the value of books that represent these stories, like it's been said by everybody else, it's so important that these books help us understand each other and that they're there for the people that want to seek out that understanding. I remember having a talk with Alice several years ago. My transgender child going through school was always interested in taking whatever class curriculum they had and putting the gay spin on it, and like, okay, let me do a research project related to history, something with all the gay people. So of course, their school didn't have those books, and we ended up at the Ferguson Library. And I went to Alice once and I was like, you know, I'm curious. I don't know why we don't have more on some of these topics. You know, I had this, you know, strange request for some, you know, very particular part of history representing gay people, and I couldn't find much on it. And Alice said to me, you know, Wendy, we do what we can to try to make sure that we have a lot of those books in stock, but honestly, a lot of them disappear. And at first I thought to myself, oh my God, are conservative people coming in and stealing the gay books? But no, it's the people out there in the community that are looking for that. And those books disappear. And I believe that there's been probably a huge concerted effort to expand that supply at the Ferguson Library. But we should know that just because we at the Stanford Board of Ed or whoever else say that we don't want to have those books in our classrooms, that doesn't mean that the people in our community aren't seeking them. So let's make sure that we supply that.
Awesome. Alice, I suppose that's a good problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless, right? Wow.
Right. No, I think just to add to that, what Wendy just said, because it's always been on top of my mind, because sometimes we have LGBTQ authors who don't represent the white dominant culture, right? So sometimes like there's a lot of South Asian people who write these novels, and I think, well, should I buy this book or not? Because no one's come out and asked me for it. But I know that there are people out there, and just because they're not in my face, they're not writing me an email or sending me a note or calling me, doesn't mean that they don't exist. And so even if I don't see that person, I know that there's somebody out there that needs that book. So we do try to replace as much as we can. And we also try to buy those books where someone might question us as to why that book is in our collection.
Okay. There was a question in the back, the lady with the glasses.
Thank you everyone for all your amazing and powerful stories. I really appreciate hearing from everybody. My cousin transitioned from being a girl to a boy later in life when she was in high school. And my children are so innocent and they're like, okay, she's went from Jessica to Jason, and they don't even think anything of it. That being said, I read the book, and the age that they're introducing this book into public school is 3rd grade, 7 years old. So me as a parent, they've been in this experience, which is fortunate that they can be introduced to this in an organic way. But as you guys have said yourself, the teachers aren't equipped to even handle a conflict, let alone handle this discussion. So when me as a parent have a 7-year-old in school who are now being introduced this topic, which they should be introduced to organically at 7 years old, versus a teacher who might have their own biases, and then talk to the students about it, and then they're not equipped to handle and field those questions. I think we're putting a lot of effort and pressure on our teachers to be able to be the counselors, the social workers, when they are dealing with so much more in class. So I am not for banning the book at all. I think that to introduce it in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, which is what the Stanford public school system is proposing, isn't okay with me, because they haven't even had basic sexual education for the last 3 years because of COVID. So for the schools to then take it upon themselves to introduce this topic in a younger grade where they're still innocent. My daughter said yesterday, "Mom, can I marry you?" She's 7. I said, "Sure, you can. You can marry me." And then my 9-year-old is like, "No, that'd be cheating. She's married to Dad." And I'm like, both you fools don't realize you can't marry your mom. But there's such an innocence at this age. And when you put more pressure and more emphasis on their innocence to pick a side, in my opinion, the book itself brings up a topic of the grandfather who doesn't support his daughter and doesn't support his daughter coming out. And then me, if I am feeling that way, where I'm not sure of if I'm trans, if I'm gay, or what I am, if I heard my own grandfather didn't support my mother coming out as gay, what is that going to do to me? So it's bringing up topics that a high school, elementary school teacher is not equipped to handle. So I do think that the book should be introduced in middle school, in high school, but I am not agreeing with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade of the book being introduced then.
And it sounds like you're for more teacher professional development.
I definitely think teacher professional development happens, but like the young lady said over there, the N word's still being used in school. So they're reading all the books about Martin Luther King. They are interacting with the community and they're still using those words. And I think also in this book that they're teaching my children language that they don't know. They don't know what butch is. That language is given to them. It's giving a meanness in children, and it should be love everybody, no matter who you are. If you have 2 parents, 2 moms, 2 dads, a grandmother raising you, it should be love everybody in elementary school. In middle school, when people have more of a sense of self, that's when it could be. I have a friend whose daughter is a twin. One of the daughter dresses very androgynous, and we had a makeup party, and she made herself as a pirate. None of the girls cared. Nobody cared. But that girl will be highlighted more because of this book, because they'll say, well, you dress like a boy. Why don't you just say that you want to be a boy? And maybe she's not there yet. Maybe she needs some more support, or maybe she just needs time to figure out what she wants, or maybe she just wants to be different than her twin sister. Mm-hmm. But for a teacher who is not a childhood therapist to be the one to have this conversation over 3 months, because that's how long a 300 book is going to take to read in class, it seems that we're putting too much emphasis. They just aren't equipped to handle that.
Okay, there's a lot of people raising their hands. Let's go to the far left over here. Go ahead.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. To speak to the education piece, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work with queer kids predominantly. And I think you bring up a good point that the schools aren't necessarily properly prepared. I don't think that's an excuse for us not to bring this book into I think even younger, honestly. I have a 5-year-old and he knows that there are girls, boys, and non-binary. He still doesn't know all the vocabulary, but I think taking advantage of that innocence, and that makes it sound terrible, but using that, kids are more open-minded when they're younger. The longer they are exposed to the binary world we live in, the harder it is to unteach some of that hate and ignorance. But really teaching, teachers and educators how to be prepared to discuss that topic is our responsibility. It's important. I would see far fewer kids in my office with serious, mental health issues if the environment they were in was a lot more accepting. And people like us exist. Like, I go into schools and educate teachers. There's Triangle Community Center in Norwalk. There are tons of places. We are here. We are willing. I would volunteer my time to go into Stamford Public Schools and educate the teachers. But we're here, and I think it's on the burden of the Stamford Public Schools to seek us out, to find us, and to educate their teachers. And teachers shouldn't be afraid to stand up and have these conversations, and they shouldn't feel obligated to pick a side, but they should be able to have these conversations so that some of our younger kids aren't as vulnerable as they are right now.
Okay, thank you. How about on the far left over here?
Thank you so much. I just share a little bit different perspective than her. I have a 5th grader and a 2nd grader, and I will say they know a lot more than you think they know. And I mean, even in 2nd grade or whatever, they ask all these questions about, similar conversation, but can you marry a boy, marry a boy, a girl, marry a man? So they're kind of just starting to think about all that. And then when it comes to the body changes, I think after 3rd grade, my daughter has gone through changes, and like, she's being a girl, like, I think she's starting to figure out what is going on. And I think it's a good time to introduce this at schools. And I know that teachers are not equipped to talk about it, or they're not, but why not give that training? I think we need that. And I think as a class, if you talk about it and learn about it in class, it's not awkward, or it's not like anything. And I feel like, like Jacob, they will be able to stand up for their friends and support other kids. And that's what we want more kids to do. So to me, introducing that early in the stage makes it easier. And no one's, and as a class you learn, and we talk about all of this, like diversity, equity, inclusion, all of this, we're wanting to introduce it early. And so this also, to me, should be introduced at that point where they can learn together as a class.
Great. Okay, so one more. We're going to take this woman right here with the glasses, and then we're going to move on.
Hi, thank you, everyone. So my name is Dina, and I have a 7-year-old. I came here today. I've heard so many conversations about this book. I came here thinking I'm not going to agree with anything, and I'm going to be mad coming out of this meeting, and I'm just going to see, what everyone has to say. And I'm going to tell you, it's the complete opposite. Everyone here I commend that has spoken, and especially Vinny, he touched my heart like big time. That being said, I look at you, I look at you, I look at you, everyone in this room. I do not see color. I do not see gay, trans, straight. I do not see woman, man, Christian, Muslim. And I am teaching my 7-year-old son that we are all humans here on earth. We are one race. That being said, I know that my son, he does not discriminate. Everyone's a person. There's people we don't like because they're mean, and there's people that are more educated. Everyone's different. I personally agree with you and with you as well. There is no way, if my son was to be introduced to this book, and I haven't read this book, I'm going to admit to that, I'm going to read it. He is not ready for that. And the way that I think about it is putting that into his head. He's starting to separate and doing what the people around us above have done to all of us. Instead of uniting us, we're all being chopped up into this category, this category, this category. And it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what you look like. It should not matter what you want to read. It should not matter what you believe. That being said, I do think these type of things have to be written, and people do need to be educated. My child's not ready in 3rd grade. He probably won't be ready until 6th or 7th grade, and he will read it. But I think there's something we need to think about. And already, I grew up here in Stamford. The school systems are not equipped to be even teaching what they're teaching, let alone something like this, which could harm, I think, and separate us even more. The teachers need a lot more support, especially with what they're going through. I have family that is gay family, cousins. I've hired transgender employees because I do not see anything but human in this human race. That's what we should be teaching our kids, kindness, and that we are all the same. So I'm glad that I came here. Thank you. But I do believe we need to figure out, first of all, how do we fix our schools, let alone teaching kindness and teaching acceptance without categorizing everyone. We are all humans. That needs to come from the family. And that's all. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay, one more. Faith, go ahead, real quick.
I disagree with both of you guys because basically like little kids, that's where you learn to be mean, right? And when I was in elementary school, on the playground, like my dad said before, people would be like, "Oh, you have 2 dads. That's so gay." It's like that doesn't happen. Like you don't like, I mean, yes, of course it is gay because they're but that's besides the point. But I mean, the fact that little kids in kindergarten are saying that, and then you're saying that your 3rd grader isn't like well equipped enough to understand the book, and you don't think that that it's not right, it's not at the right age for them, that's BS. Because if your kid in kindergarten starts saying that's so gay, that means they might not know what gay means, but the fact that they're using that language means that they can get it in their head that it's gay is something, right? Gay people are gay, people are lesbian, people are whatever they want to be. But if it's too late to teach it in middle school, because I'm in 8th grade, right? But I know for a fact it's not for a fact, but kids are going to learn it more in elementary school than they are in middle school. But because by middle school, people already have those stereotypes in their head. They're like, gay people are weird, straight people are superior. Like I've heard people say that in my middle school, right? And if, yeah, sure, your kid could fully understand the book in 7th grade, but it's too late to be teaching them that. Because I would prefer to have my kid, when I'm an adult, not have to go through hearing that their grandpa, their grandparents are that's so gay, because that's unacceptable. Because if your kindergartners are saying that, and the fact that you can't let them even be read to by a book in 3rd grade about real stuff that happens in this world, like you said, you've hired transgender people, and you say you don't like look at people as that. But by you saying I've hired transgender people and then I don't look at people like that, that means, but you did look at them as a transgender person, because then you could be like, oh, I've hired people, period. Not, oh, I've hired transgender people. That if it's a person, it's a person.
We're just going to take one more with this lady in the back.
Hi, just a couple things. Thank you everyone for sharing. I know it's not easy. I'm an educator here in Stamford, an elementary school teacher. I'm also the parent of a 7-year-old. And I think it's very important to have these kinds of books, any kinds of books that represent anyone that's different, so that we can have inclusivity. It makes me cringe when people say I don't see something, because we have to see it. It doesn't mean you have to see it in a negative light, but you have to see it to acknowledge it, and so that people are seen and heard and can be represented and accepted. I'm learning tonight that and you used the word privilege, which I was looking for the right word to use. When you were sharing about your a third grader, whether or not they're ready to learn. I don't know that, I feel like that's kind of a privileged thing to say. And I could be wrong. I'm just speaking my own thoughts because I question what is appropriate when it comes to trans. I grew up with gay uncles. Everything was accepted in my family, color, everything, but it was seen. Everybody exists. So I think I'm learning tonight that everyone that's been brave enough to share their stories, everyone's figuring out things at 3 years old, 12, whatever it is. So I think the younger the kids learn, kids don't care. And I don't mean it, they don't care in a mean way. It doesn't bother them.
Right.
Like you said, these things are learned, I believe, from, unfortunately, sometimes families, sometimes from ignorance, people being afraid of the unknown. But my son, for example, saw a gentleman on TV who was wearing women's clothing. And he said, why is he wearing that? And he said, well, he likes it. He makes him feel good. And that's what he's choosing to wear. And okay. I mean, kids, if you teach them that it's just different, it's not wrong, it's not better, it's just different. I think we just have to acknowledge these things, and these types of books are not, and I agree 1000% that Stanford teachers I want to learn more because I don't know everything. I was a social major. I don't know everything because when I was in school a bazillion years ago, these classes weren't around. And I mean, gay people couldn't even be married. So we all have a lot to learn, and I think teachers should be trained, but we already are social workers in some form. I
Yeah.
hate to tell you,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So anyway, I respect everyone's opinions. I think it's important for everyone to share their fears and concerns, but I think, I don't know, I mean, I'm learning from the brave students that are here sharing their stories that I'm in a privileged position to say, I don't know if my child's ready, or when I don't even know what my child's
Yeah,
if
you're
my
right.
child's going to be a straight
Okay,
male.
thank
So,
you. I appreciate your comment. So I'm going to let people chime in later, but I just want to move on to the next question. I've got 2 more questions, and I do want to hear from everybody. We've got 22 more minutes, but I just want to ask this one question of our LGBTQ students assembled here, and I know there's a lot of you. If you had read this book when you were younger, how might this have affected younger you? If you had read it, or if some of your peers had read it, how might that have affected you?
All right, I'm gonna be honest. I've never read this book, but I have read similar, so it's fine,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So if I have read anything, like anything remotely LGBTQ related, I would have been allowed at my uncle's funeral, not funeral. Oh wait, wrong one. Wedding. Sorry, stumbling over my words. I would have been allowed at his wedding. The only reason I wasn't allowed at his wedding was because it was so looked down upon, and I lived in Utah. So that was already like obvious, right?
How old were you?
When they got married,
Yeah.
okay. When it was his first marriage, I was 3, and then his second marriage was when I was in 3rd grade.
So you learned acceptance very young.
Yeah,
It was
very
never a
young.
question.
I think my uncle, when I was younger, he wanted to take me to a pride event, but my parents were all like, no, because my mom is really Christian. I had a Christian face too. Not to discriminate. Y'all are okay. Sorry, I don't know what to say to that.
I'm
anyway.
Christian and I'm gay.
Yeah, you're fine. You're cool. Just if you're understanding, you're fine and cool. But no, because if my peers have read it, then because the first time I've ever heard no, that's so gay, I was so young. I didn't even comprehend the word yet. I was in like 1st grade.
Right.
And it was from older kids, like because in elementary school in Utah, I don't know if you guys know this, everyone goes to recess together. Everyone, like all grades, pretty much. So I always hung out with my cousins because they were in the same school as I was, because they're older. and kids around them would say, "Oh, that's so gay." I wouldn't know what that means because I'm like in first grade, kindergarten even.
Mhm.
And yeah, what Faith was saying, being ignorant and rude is taught as a kid. So the books we read, okay, we read a lot of like racial books as a kid. And when I was a kid, like we learned what slavery was in first grade. I remember learning about slavery in first grade. And we also learned about stuff like that. We learned about problematic issues that happened in the past. We have changed really young, so we could like understand that. Granted, it was Utah, so we didn't cover it well. But it was like we learned it and it was younger, and I would say personally there's less racism and sexism in Utah than there is homophobia and transphobia. Like there's less of it because it's just like, oh, we learned about that, we know it's bad.
Mhm.
But homophobia and transphobia is just like, oh, you're gay and trans, I'm gonna call you slurs.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's just a lot worse in my opinion from what I've seen. I mean, yeah, racism exists like a lot still. But in younger kids especially, I see that it's like, oh, you're a person of color, high five, I want to play with you on the playground. Compared to, oh, you're gay, get away from me.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I
mhm.
witnessed that when I went to go say hi to my sixth grade teacher because she was amazing. I love her.
All right.
So
Well, I just want to say that we're happy that you're here from Utah, and
yeah,
we hope that you
thankfully.
find a welcoming community,
Thankfully,
and we're
yes.
happy you're here. So anybody else want to chime in on this? Yeah, go ahead, way on the left.
Hello. I just want to say that when I was a kid, we never read anything that was about anyone like this, obviously. And, growing up, I'm almost 40 now. And when I was a kid, being gay was like the worst thing that you could possibly be in school. I mean, people would,
Yeah,
that
kiss of
was,
death.
it was, yeah. And obviously all of you guys know that, but I'm so happy for our kids that there are books like this and that there are shows that have gay and trans kids on them. I mean, the fact is that these kids exist, and there are kids who are in third grade right now who know this about themselves, but don't know enough to explain it or don't know that it's okay. And so I think if I had read a book like this when I was a kid, it would have been so cool just to know that this was a thing and that it existed. And, maybe it changes a few minds and hearts, and it's just lovely. And I'm so happy for all my kids that they get to see this stuff and read it and know that these people exist and that people like them exist. And it's just, yeah, it's just great. So,
Thank you.
all good.
Well, I read a lot of Eric Carle, and I'm still fearful that I'm going to turn into a very hungry caterpillar. So, I don't know, could happen. Anybody else want to try? Any student? I want to hear from kids. Vinny, you spoke. Alex?
I think having books like this in school are really important because if you're not taught this at a young age, you're going to learn from other students who have their own biases and stuff. And it's just worse than learning about it at a young age. That's it.
Okay.
Well said.
Any other student want to chime in? Go ahead. These guys over here.
I just wanted to add, oh, sorry.
It's all right. Go.
Can I just one quick thing, like if you don't find this information in school, if you're looking for it, you're going to turn elsewhere to find it, and you might be looking for it in places that don't help you learn about it in a way that helps you as a person, and you might end up looking for it in places that can end up hurting you. And I just wanted to add that.
Like the internets.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about, because you were talking about like what you think this book would have affected. How
would it have affected the younger you?
Exactly. And to the fault of nobody really, just in general, a lot of what I had to learn about LGBTQ, just stuff in general, I had to learn myself from other people, especially at AIT, which is incredibly, I'm really fortunate to be able to go to a school such as AIT.
Yeah.
Because it's a very accepting community, and I can walk down the hallway with eyeliner on and not be called a slur.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of what a lot of what I know now, I really had to learn on my own in like super late, like 8th grade, freshman year, especially freshman year. I learned so much. And I never really, like, it was always there, and it was always something that I accepted. And I credit that to like my parents. I love my mom.
Yes, I
N-
know your
just-
mother. She's awesome. You too are lucky. You come from such a welcoming,
Yeah.
loving, smart household.
Yeah, I always there was always stuff there, and it was always something that I accepted. But there was so much.
We're allowed to be able to accept.
Exactly. There was so much knowledge that I could have known, even though I knew people were different, and I knew people were struggling with different things that I may not have been struggling with. But there's so much knowledge involved. And if I had known that, it would have been so much more beneficial, and not in for the people who didn't have, say, this accepting upbringing, and the being allowed to accept everyone and no matter their differences.
Mm.
That is so much more important to
Mm.
see that. Like I mentioned before, it's so much more important to see that and learn about it and know about it, and not have to learn about it, like was mentioned over here, from other kids. Like an example, like I played baseball for a while, which almost
Sorry,
feels bad. I
so
know.
sorry.
It feels bad to say, because like, especially like after playing baseball, I realized how horrible it was. But last
Had to step through it.
yeah, last season, I was on possibly the worst baseball team yet. Like the things I heard while on that team was absolutely terrible. The kid straight up said to me, "I don't like F slurs," to my face, because
Oh.
he said that having an earring was gay. And I'm like, why are
Mhm.
you using that as, I didn't want to argue with him. I was just like, why are you using that as an offensive term? He
Hmm.
said, he just straight up said that to my face, smiling, thinking it was a joke.
When was that? How long ago?
I think it was last spring.
So
Yeah.
recent.
So relatively recent.
Hmm.
Kind of losing my train of thought, but
Oh, yeah.
so much of so a lot of what these kids think is, it's like they don't understand it as a thing that's normal in that should be accepted.
Normal for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's normal for me, and it's normal for people who understand it and accept it, but it's not normal for them. To them, it's a joke. It's an insult. It's something that, if you're this, you're terrible. Like the amount of times I've heard gay used as an insult in the public schools, even in AIT, which it doesn't happen very often, but in middle school,
Mm.
it was absolutely horrible how many times I've heard it used as an insult. And I just feel like, I don't know, kids need to learn about this. And
Yeah.
if I had read about this, and if so many other kids have read about this, I'm kind of reiterating a lot of things, but if so many people have read it and will read about this, I think it'll really, really help,
Yeah.
which
Well,
I think.
listen, I applaud you for your bravery every day, for being yourself, right? To step into your truth, you need to be brave. And you have a community that supports you. So your school supports you. Yeah, I know there's wonderful counselors and teachers at AIT
Shout
that
out to Ms.
support you.
Smith, I love you.
So, right. So, we're glad you're here. So thank you. All right, one more student, and then I just want to get to one last question, and then we'll get to some last remarks. I'm sorry? Your mom just asked a question? Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Since she's like on her way to like come get me, since it's almost I asked her real quick, like, what do you think about trans people like being involved in kids literature? And she's all like, it's something that needs to be discussed, considering I would have wished I had that literature. Now that I have a trans child, I don't know what to do with it. Like, like she wasn't referring to me as it, like she now knows what to do, but at first she was so confused. She didn't know whether to cast me out because she was Christian or whether to accept me because that's what her mom would have done. She just was so confused. So she would have loved this literature.
Good,
She
but
says.
kudos to her because she's trying. And I always say to kids, adults are stupid. Give them a break. Go, right? You be patient with us. We might misgender you. We might say something stupid or not quite right in the moment. So be patient and give us a chance to catch up with you, right? One more, Sam. Another brilliant AITE on her way to a fabulous college on full scholarship. We are so proud of you. Oh my gosh. You're the best of the best.
I'll be very quick and I'm gonna just pass it down to Braden. What I was gonna say is I loved watching Disney back then, and in every Disney show, especially like Snow White and whatever, you have a boy and a girl and they're kissing, right? Like that's something that you're introduced at a very young age, and lots of little kids watch Disney, lots of little kids watch and that's normalized. So I just, growing up, I never understood, why we always make a big deal about these certain things, because I feel like if we can introduce certain topics to kids in this, it's normal. Why can't we do it in the same way in this sense? I remember watching this movie and the entire theme was he was making a video about his family, about his two dads, and the whole theme that he was trying to go is his dads were going through divorce. His whole point was, my family is no different from yours. Although they kept asking, oh wow, you have two dads, it's just like they're also in like a normal loving relationship. Although they're going through different things, it's the same as your parents going through a divorce. And I always saw, why can't we do the same with literature? I love reading, and it would have been so nice to know that I could have had this in my, book collection, like to have that knowledge, to, know all that terminology. And I think it's important that kids have that as well, if they can, through Disney, through television. You can't have kids can't escape certain things. They're exposed in the internet. We have to come back to reality to notice that you're going to see this. You can't shelter your kids that bad. They have to accept reality. And so it's just important to, like, if you can let your kids see a hetero couple, or if they can see someone who's cisgender, what's the difference for someone? Like, we have to affirm those labels. It's okay to say that I'm a Black woman. It's okay. That's the same way you could say it's okay that I'm trans, or that I'm straight. We don't have to not stop seeing labels. It doesn't mean that we can't accept people. We can't say that they're normal. Well, normal is a weird way to say, anyways. We can't say that they're exactly. You can't say that they're great. We should accept them. It's okay to affirm labels. It should be okay. We should normalize seeing certain identities on TV in the same way we've normalized it for a long time, to seeing it on kids' television. So I don't know. Just
Okay.
growing up, it's always been weird.
I want to get to one last question. Thank you. I want to get to one last question, and then if anybody else has something they want to say, we'll get to that. I just want to ask this one last question. We've got 8 more minutes. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. This has been what I hoped it is a polite, civil conversation. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So just this one last one, some people in our community are upset by this book. Why do you think people find it so upsetting? What is there anybody who is upset about this book, or anybody want to chime in on that?
Can I jump in and answer that?
Sure. No.
Yeah, well, the book teaches topics that a lot of parents coming from older generations, who are coming from less educated households, it's something that's going directly against their worldview. It's something that they've been raised to believe isn't right, or isn't real, or isn't true. It's something that they've been raised to believe that's something it's not only that's not comfortable, that they shouldn't be comfortable with. But the problem is that trans kids are going to exist whether cis kids and cis adults are comfortable or not. Gay kids are going to exist whether straight kids and straight adults are comfortable or not, right? Kids from every end of the spectrum are going to exist whether kids and adults who aren't are comfortable or not. So even though they're uncomfortable with this idea, that does not, with, you know, the concept of being queer, that does not stop or that does not invalidate for being queer kids from being who they are.
Well said.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to speak on like the topic of like, I guess normalizing something like this. So my mother, I don't believe was very super familiar with topics like this when she was young, but she always taught Lucas and I just to be like accepting
You're
of other
twins.
people. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Just to be accepting of other people and don't judge anyone, don't make fun of anyone based on anything that they do unless it's like hurtful to somebody else. And so I always, when in middle school, like Lucas said, when people would just be like, oh, that's so gay, when when they would like as an insult, using it derogatorily, I would always just get upset at them, and I would say like, why are you doing that? And so especially recently, I believe that being open to understanding, which is my mother has been doing a very good job at, is just being able to learn, being willing to learn and understand, so that you can be more educated, and that you can understand other people and their perspectives and be caring, is very important.
Maybe somebody can teach me to like baseball. I don't know, my daughter. Yes, you can. Yes. Here, give her the microphone because this is on Zoom. So if you could just hand her the microphone. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just happened in on this, but this has been very fascinating listening to this. I'm a woman who's 63 years old, and I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I can be discriminated against in a different way. All I know how to do is seat people down the street at the Palace Theater, which is nice because I'm in an environment of theater where many of the employees are gay. So it's just something I live with and look at every day. But the things that do disturb me are that law in the elementary schools, when they said they can't talk about people who are gay in the elementary. To me, that is so warped, because all it takes is you teach a kid this, and then they go out to the movies and they see in the movie theater or a restaurant or anywhere.
Internet.
Right, or the internet, or no, the parents take the kid out to like IHOP or a movie theater or anywhere, just a normal place, and they see a same-sex couple with a child there. That now it creates confusion, that when people are taught that they can't talk about this.
Okay.
Or even in their own classroom, why does Susie, or why does my classmate have two mommies? And I also have a brother who's gay. So this has been a part of my life, but I wish that more people in the world would be open to it.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead. Mom. Oh.
I just wanted to follow up on what my sons were saying. I am over 50 years old. I didn't know a lot about this. I grew up in northern Vermont in a very white community. So moving down to Stanford, I learned a lot about a lot of different groups of people. I have 4 kids. They, growing up in Stanford, are so accepting, have always been accepting. And as Braden just said, I've always taught them to be kind. It doesn't matter who they are, just be kind. Yes, I am learning a lot of stuff. I'm learning the terminology. I'm learning who people are. But the thing that I think parents, especially older parents like me and people who maybe are a little bit older, is that we didn't grow up with it. And we're ignorant to understanding it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the biggest problem. If you can't open up to listen and learn about it, you're going to be, as you were saying, fearful of it and afraid to let it be put out there for other people to learn, whether it's your kids or anyone else. So I think the older generations have to just learn about it. Now, I think just having this book put out in the public in Stanford, probably, at least I hope, that a lot of people went out and bought it and read it. I read it. And maybe that was a good thing, because whether you read it because you didn't like it, or you read it because you wanted to learn, or you read it because you supported it, at least people were reading it.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that the older generation, and I don't know how to do this, but needs to learn as well.
Mhm. Amen. Okay, so I'm gonna let Megan talk and then we'll do one more comment over here and then we're gonna wind up very soon. It's 1 minute before 8, so we'd like to wind this up. So real quick.
I just wanted to speak to what you asked, Joe, as far as why people might have a problem with
Mhm.
books like this. And I think that it's because it's not, we're using the word normalized. It's not normalized for people to question elements of their own gender identity. It's much more normalized for people to cut off parts of themselves so that they exist in, for instance, a specific role of mother, a specific role of what a woman means to be in society, a specific expectation of what men are supposed to do in society, what it means to be a man. And I think that those things are played out by kids because we know that kids learn through observation and mimicking. So when we're seeing things like calling people gay, or when we're seeing boys that are not expressing their emotions and instead they're bullying other people who are expressing their emotions, it's because they see someone that is supposed to be expressing as quote unquote male who's stepping out of line.
Right.
And that's why there's so much violence and vitriol against trans people. It's because that's not how you're supposed to act. That's not what we learn about in our culture, about what men and women do, because those are social constructs. If we remove those from biological sex, from male, female, and we
Yeah.
talk about men and women as socially constructed things that we construct all the time with our hair,
Mhm.
with our clothes, with
Gender
all of these
reveal
things,
parties.
with, oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, I went to one of those for my in-laws and I said, and I had 2 pins. I had the football pin and the dress pin because you could
Mm.
only choose one of those.
Ah.
And when I was a little kid, I got put in a dress and I could really throw a football, and that was very problematic for me.
Mm.
And it like blew some people's minds who were there, who were of my generation. So I know we're talking about generations as well, but
Yeah,
some
yeah.
of this has to do with erasure, that you might not have learned about this in your generation, but it didn't mean that we didn't exist.
Right.
There were cross-dressing laws. There were so many ways in which we were wiped off the street. And if you don't have a public restroom, guess what? It limits your amount of time in public. So that is not a fickle thing when we talk about these things. These are very systematic, and these are things that have happened to groups that have entered the mainstream from fringes, you know, for forever. So we really can also talk about the fact that it might be problematic because it actually goes against the whole system of what we learn in our culture of how we're supposed to act.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Awesome. One more. Somebody who hasn't spoken. Mike, do you want to chime in? Come to the mic. Come to the mic, Mike.
Hi, I graduated from AITE 10 years ago, and at the time, I didn't know inside myself that I was non-binary. I didn't know that I was bisexual or polyamorous, and one thing that did that to me was that before I even got to high school, I had the idea that it was something other, that it was something abnormal. And I sort of had that idea growing up all the way through high school. And one aspect of it is still, the repression still affects me today. You know, I know I'm bisexual. I've never had the courage to, you know, explore the non-heterosexual portion of that. And you know, suffice it to say, it was because I learned young that I didn't think of myself that way. So when I eventually did come out, I ended up with a lot of repression. And I think that books like this are really important because they teach kids in a way that kids can be taught. You know, we teach kids about trucks. That doesn't mean that they know how combustion engines work, but we still teach them about trucks.
Good point. Good analogy.
And I think that that's valuable. So
Thank
Yep.
you. Appreciate it. Okay, one more. Somebody want to have the last say? Have you spoken? No. All right, go ahead. You're it. You're going to close this out. No pressure.
Hi, sorry. I just want to say that from what I have heard people saying, the problem that they have with this book is or talking about transgender issues in elementary school is that they think it's about sex, and they don't want their 7, 8-year-old talking about sexual intercourse and not an understanding that gender identity has nothing to do with sexual intercourse. And that even sexual orientation, if we talk about couples in our families, heterosexual couples, and we always are talking about who's in your family, mommy and daddy, and da, da, da. Nobody talks about the fact that mommy and daddy are having sex. So why does it matter that if you have two mothers or two fathers, you know, all of a sudden you're introducing sex, sexual intercourse into the conversation? And I think that's people's problem with it. And as far as this book, I read this book. I have a high schooler, I have a fifth grader, and I have a third grader. And when I read this book, my overriding feeling was these conversations absolutely need to start in preschool, but this book is not relevant to a third grader because this book talks about the transition to middle school and all the changes that are going on. And there's a whole lot of other transition anxiety that really happens with tweens and teens. So in my opinion, this book is great for fifth grade because fifth graders are starting to worry about that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to middle school and it's going to be so hard and I'm going to have 8 different teachers and all of that. And so it just strikes me as overblown that people are concerned, parents are concerned that their third graders are going to be reading this book, because I would really be surprised that any third grade teacher is going to choose this book as the read aloud. They weren't told they had to. It's just on a book list.
Yeah.
So I think really parents' concerns are completely overblown by this. It's appropriate for fifth grade and up, and that's who should be reading it. And we should have a different book for younger.
Okay. Anybody else dying to make one last comment? Go. And somebody who hasn't spoken. Mary, or who did you?
I just wanted to say just one really quickly. I think that would be really helpful, is I think that it is great to give language to students, and I am all for that. But one of the things that I worry about, and I'm putting on not necessarily my mom hat, but my social work hat, is making sure parents are understanding of this. So I think more parent pop-ups and webinars so they can understand, because we do have a large population, people who just immigrated, people who just came. And I think that that's something that's really important, because my biggest fear in sort of reading this, when I put my social work hat on, is if, let's say, we have an 8-year-old who read this and was like, oh my God, this is who I am. This is my authentic self, right? They go home to mommy and daddy and they kind of talk about this. And the parent was like, I don't know. I've never heard of that word. What is that word? Then they learn about it. They freak out. They drag child to see, you know, whether it's the local priest or minister or whatever, or they beat the child or something of that nature. That's what I worry about, right? Like, prior to me working at Stanford Public Schools and Kids of Crisis, I also worked in Harlem for many years. And I had that really hard, you know, I was part of parent meetings when their kids came out and their parents got upset and kicked them out, right? So I think one of the things that I think we need to do both of is, yes, having this for the students, but I also feel like we need to help the parents who don't know, right? So is that more pop-up webinars? Is that, you know, what does that look like? So I think that that's something that I kind of just want to sort of put out there as well, that it's great that we arm the kids, but we also need to arm their parents as well. And that's sort of just, you know, my perspective on that.
And that's a nice segue to my parting thought of starting a PFLAG chapter in Stanford. So if anybody would like to come and sign up here or grab a business card, I'm happy to reach out to you. Vicki Bergman and I are planning to have a formational meeting in April. We'd love to include people in. So
Yay. And if anybody has questions about Lighthouse, my email is really easy. It's lighthouse@kidsincrisis.org. Lighthouse@kidsincrisis.org. It is 8:09. Thank you, everybody. Go, Sherry. I forgot, I have so many pots boiling. On April 12th, we are gleefully celebrating Lighthouse's 10th anniversary. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of Stanford, to be in Stanford. So we are opening our doors on April 12th to the community. Everyone in this room is invited. If you would like to come, let me know so I can tell the caterer. So it's lighthouse@kidsincrisis.org. I would love to see you. Our kids will be there. Everybody from our community will be there. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alice Knapp, for this wonderful hosting this us. It's been fantastic.
And thank you to Dr.
you,
Lucero for
thank-
joining us. I know you had a busy
And
night. but
yes, thank you, Dr. Lucero, for taking time to be with us. Thank you so much. And thank you to Chris from Stanford Pride. This has just been awesome. I hope we can do some similar nights again and talk about issues that are germane to our community and things that affect us and our children. Thank
other
you,
good
everybody.
books on the list.
And
that
lots
will
of good
be at
books on the
door.
list. So there's a great list that you can have, take, bring home. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a great night.